I'm Corey Leo from the Gab Street Podcast, and this is the Zebo. How did I start Gab Street? So it was actually a high school project at first. You know how some high schools have like the senior project, like capstone? Mm-hmm. So my buddy Gage and I kind of just had the podcast itch. It was for his capstone. He came to me, we started it, it went past his capstone. And I ended up morphing it to what I wanted it to be, and he ended up leaving, so now it's just mine. Okay. That's the long and short of that, basically. Yeah. Mission of Gab Street is to inform people like the people I went to high school with at Upper Arlington High School, not to name any names, that there is cool stuff in Columbus, and that you should pay attention to your surroundings, because there are a lot of people who live here who complain about, you know, I mean, obviously the weather's the first thing, but a lot of people complain that nothing happens here, and there's just such a rich underground culture of musicians, visual artists, business owners, people who make merch. So, I mean, there's just plenty to pay attention to that people aren't. So I'm trying to do that for people. So at the very beginning, for the first, 15 or 16 episodes, we only did guests every other episode. And at that point, like, now I have a whole, like, spreadsheet and organized system. But back then it was just like, hey, we're recording this on this day, you want to hop in? Like, it was just one-offs at that point. And I think the first guest we had was on the second episode, and it was our best friend, Mike Ralston. And if you are interested in hearing a story about mental health, you can go back and listen to episode 2. But the initial ones were friends, and then we graduated on to people that were in the scene around episode, 13 or so, something like that. So, I would say that the art community in Columbus is simultaneously very tight-knit, but also cliquey at the same. Like, does that make any sense? Because the people that are ride or die for each other are super ride or die, and people hold each other up. Mm-hmm. There are large pockets of people supporting each other, but only within their pocket, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like, between, let's say, musical genres, there isn't a lot of overlap when it comes to that. People don't know each other from different musical genres in the scene. Even there are some different cliques when it comes to the rap scene too. That's a tough one. So there have been some really great interviews. We just did one that came out this past Wednesday with Mikey Saboro, who founded Mikey's Late Night Slice. Great dude, super easy to get along with, super funny. But I'd have to say the most memorable episode, the most memorable moment from the show actually, is when exactly a year ago today, apparently, we had 3rd Congressional District candidate Morgan Harper on the show. I think it was like episode 36 or something. And during it, my co-host Zay Crypto said that they should put LSD in the White House water supply. He said that directly to Morgan, who is running to represent the 3rd District. So she said, "I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that," and I said, "That does not represent the views of our show," and then we continued. Nice. But balancing work with play with the podcast, it happens very naturally because all the preparation for the episodes allows the episode to just be fun. I write out an extensive list of questions for every guest I have on. I do research on them deeply. I find everything I can on the internet before writing down stuff. And then, I have how it's going to go in my head. I have the whole schedule in front of me. And then once I'm in the moment, I have everything else taken care of, so I can just focus on the guest while I'm recording. And my favorite part of the whole thing is the recording itself. I'm in my element when it comes to just sitting there and focusing on the person, making them feel respected, asking them questions. It's my favorite part of what I do. So that's the fun part, I'd say. Only when the person doesn't have that much out. Mostly, if somebody has information, I have a very easy time doing it. I don't even, like... People will be receptive to even the slightest amount of research as well. So I don't necessarily have to go into, like, you know, the Library of Congress or anything about anybody. But there are some people that I've interviewed where maybe I'm catching them at the beginning of their career, and so they don't have much information on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. So I just have to ask them about what they have so far and then add general questions in that kind of apply to everybody, you know. I do. My favorite podcasts, I'll list local and then national. Locally, I listen to Super Duty Tough Work with Blueprint and The Logic. Probably the best podcast in Columbus. Gonna put that out there. Better than mine. Go listen to them. Well, Apples and Oranges, I do an interview show. They do educational. But I also listen to... It's been a little bit since I've listened to them, but I would recommend listening to Pre-Dead Boys. They record here in Columbus, and they're very entertaining. They make the concept of death very less scary, in my opinion. And then national, I used to listen to Joe Rogan until he had some very transphobic people on his show that he agreed with, so now I have stopped. But other than that, I keep it mostly local now that I think about it. Yeah, I sure do. Glad you asked that. So, the idea was hatched actually this past Monday, so you got in very quickly. We're starting a channel called Gab Street Gaming. We are going to be inviting, if you know who I am already, you've probably seen all the ads for this on Instagram from our account. We're playing games of Among Us with people from Columbus that are like rappers, visual artists, event coordinators, business owners, stuff like that. We're just bringing in people that have already been on the show, really, to come play with us and be in videos. And in post, I'm going to incorporate some promo stuff, some, you know, introductions of certain people, but it's mostly just for fun. We're going to branch out in other games. And the other thing that we have coming out, as soon as COVID is over, everything is set in place for us to start recording a show called Gab Street Eats. We're going to be going around to different restaurants in Columbus. We're going to be interviewing their owners, their chefs, even their patrons sometimes. We're going to be reviewing their food and also interviewing a separate person at the same time. So you'll have like a ton of things to focus on at the same time. You'll be learning a lot about Columbus in the process. Nice. Okay, that's a good question. Starting is very easy. You can start anything you want. Go ahead. You'll be able to do it. Keeping it going and being consistent is what will set you apart from anyone else. And, you know, if you listen to anyone else that's asked a similar question, they'll probably say the same thing. It's just consistency, keep going. Like, our goal for the rest of 2020 is to not quit. That's the big, you know, because COVID, I mean, it stopped shows. We were going to be throwing shows this year, a lot of them, and then that interrupted those plans. So just don't stop. Be consistent, release. If you're doing a podcast like I am, keep a consistent release schedule, release every week, every month, whatever you need to do. We are releasing episode 87 next week, so it's been a long time coming. Yeah, but that's the hardest part.
And in those 87, have you ever missed a week?
We have missed a couple of weeks for a couple of reasons. First time we missed was the second week when we thought we were going to do a bi-weekly show. We recorded the second episode, and I said, Gage, let's just start doing this every week. I think we can handle it. And he said, sure. And then the other time that we missed episodes is because of what was going on in downtown Columbus with the protests and everything. We decided that it was more important for people to focus on the social issues that were at hand than listening to our show, because we wouldn't have been relevant to it because we would have just been interviewing someone at that point. Mm-hmm. So we skipped 2 weeks for that. Okay. Yeah. I literally just threw it out on a whim. So I was like, Gage, what are we going to call this? And he was like, I don't know, Pizza Bus Podcast or whatever. And I was like, Gab Street. And he was like, cool. And then he made a logo, and then we went with it. That was pretty much.
That's awesome.
Also, the pizza part was because we both worked in pizza places a lot.
Okay.
Anyway. So 5 years, I'd say maybe some of the side projects have fallen off, but the actual interview show is still going. At the very least, the core that is the interview show will always be there. Gab Street Eats will either be there or not. If it worked out, then we're going to keep doing it. I see significant equipment improvements as well. Better lighting, bringing the video back, better microphone, because the one I have is actually slowly falling apart right now. Maybe like some lapel mics or whatever. But basically just a better operation, definitely a different location, maybe even a dedicated location for it as well.
Nice.
Well, actually, what makes Gab Street is the fact that no one else is focusing on the audience that we are. Not audience, pool of people to interview from, because we're focusing on Columbus and Columbus only. But we're also broader than some other shows where they'll interview Columbus personalities, but it's all musicians. We interview musicians, business owners, everybody in the creative community possible. And we do our best to always show the most respect to everyone as possible. We don't really entertain negativity very much. I know other shows maybe like to focus on negative things, like to focus on beefs within communities and things like that. We're not about that. We do get political sometimes, but it's not like we don't focus on those aspects of our culture, only the positive. So, if you haven't heard of Gab Street Podcast, you can find it on pretty much all listening and streaming platforms. That's just GAB and the word street. Our logo is a green street sign. It's very recognizable. Usually there's a planet behind it now. Support your locals before they go global. For real. Watch out for Gab Street Gaming coming out very soon. Watch out for Gab Street Eats coming out in a little while, whenever COVID ends. And that's about it, I'd say. Shout out Booty and the Kid, one of my favorite acts in town. Shout out Hello Luna, one of my favorite acts in town. And I'm wearing a shirt for 2x2 Hip Hop Fest under this. Shout out Josh Miller and Cole.